It all started in the 1930s in Jamaica, in poor Afro-Jamaican communities struggling under British colonial rule. Out of that hardship grew a movement that was part religion, part resistance, and it was fueled by a powerful dream, returning to Africa. The spark came from Marcus Garvey, a fiery black nationalist. In the 1920s, he told his followers to look to Africa, where a black king shall be crowned. He shall be the Redeemer. That prophecy hung in the air until November 2nd, 1930, when Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia. For early preachers like Leonard Howell, this was no coincidence. They saw Selassie as the prophesied Messiah, God returning to earth, whom they called Jah, and that was where the name comes from. Ras meaning chief, then Tafari is birth name. So what do Rastas actually believe? They worship one God, which is Jah, and see Western society and colonial oppression as Babylon, a corrupt system to resist. Their true home is Zion, which symbolizes Africa, the promised land. They read the Bible literally, but also hold sacred texts like the Holy PB. Their diet, called Ital, is natural and mostly vegan, avoiding pork, alcohol, and processed foods. They use ganja, that's marijuana, as a holy sacrament for medication and spiritual clarity. And their famous dreadlocks, they are rooted in Old Testament rules about not cutting hair, and they proudly symbolize African heritage. In short, Rastafari was born from a prophecy, grounded in faith, and grew into a powerful cultural and spiritual identity that still resonates worldwide today. Please remember to subscribe to Confidential History Channel, purely educational content. Let's continue. The Pan-African engine and the role of Rastafarian. At its heart, Rastafari is Pan-Africanism in motion. It tore down colonial maps, declaring that every black person, whether in the Caribbean, the US, or Africa itself, belongs to one family. This wasn't just talk. When Selassie gifted land in Shashamane, Ethiopia, he turned his spiritual dream into a physical home for returning diaspora. And the Ethiopia's flag is red, gold, and green. Rastas turned those colors into the universal banner of black pride because Ethiopia had done what few others could, defeated European colonizers and stayed free. Also take note that Ethiopia was never formally colonized by a European power. During the 19th century scramble for Africa, Emperor Menelik II successfully defended the nation by defeating the Italian army at the decisive Battle of Adwa in 1896. While Benito Mussolini's Italy launched a second invasion and occupied the country from 1936 to 1941, historians generally do not classify this as colonization. This brief period is considered a harsh military occupation as the pre-war government was restored after Allied and Ethiopian forces expelled the Italian army during World War I. Moving on to the fighting apartheid in South Africa as the 1960s and 70s rolled in, the movement set its sight on South Africa's brutal apartheid regime. For the country's marginalized Khoisan people, Rastafari offered a lifetime, a way to reclaim a stolen heritage and rebuild self-worth. The apartheid government knew the threat. They branded Rastas as agitators, jailed them for marijuana and vagrancy, and violently suppressed their message. Yet, Rastas stood firm, turning their faith into a weapon of spiritual resistance that cost many their lives. Again to the Americas echoes in the American civil rights struggle. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Rastafari ran parallel to the mainstream US civil rights movement. While Martin Luther King Jr. marched through Southern churches, Rastafari's unapologetic Afrocentricity fueled the radical wings. The Black Panthers and Black Powers activists who demanded not just integration but total autonomy. And when Haile Selassie himself toured America, he boldly visited the Jim Crow South, publicly praising the Brown v. Board desegregation ruling, giving international weight to the fight against American segregation. What of the reggae, the soundtrack of revolution? But how did a small island faith conquer the world? Through music. Reggae, born from Rastafari meditation, became the sonic megaphone of the oppressed. Bob Marley didn't just sing, he acted as a diplomat. His song, War, was a direct broadcast of Selassie's UN speech on racial equality, and his legendary 1918 concert in Zimbabwe officially crowned reggae as the anthem of African decolonization. In South Africa, artists like Lucky Dube bypassed censors, blasting anti-apartheid messages into homes across the globe. During the 1960s and 1970s, reggae became a strategic partner in the African liberation struggles. Artists like Bob Marley, who performed at Zimbabwe's independence celebration in 1980, Peter Tosh, and South Africa's Lucky Dube utilized their platforms to voice defiance against apartheid. The music fostered psychological liberation, inspiring resilience and unity among oppressed populations fighting for human dignity. As a matter of fact, during the post-colonial period in Africa, most revolutionary leaders like Thomas Sankara, Julius Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah, Bankole Jajo, and other Pan-Africanist revolutionary leaders had some point show solidarity with the Rastafarian. A lot of artists of those generations have used the power of music to send strong messages and eye-opening analysis to send messages across the world. Rastafarian music, which is reggae, served as a vital cultural weapon against systemic oppression across Africa. It provided a spiritual and political soundtrack for decolonization, promoted Pan-African unity, and rallied listeners against white supremacy, systemic injustice, and apartheid. Rastafari philosophy views Africa, specifically Ethiopia, as the spiritual homeland. Reggae music propagated the idea of repatriation, encouraging the African diaspora to mentally and physically reclaim their heritage. Bridging the gap between the Caribbean and Africa, the music instilled immense pride and a shared global identity among Black populations. The lesson we learned today, the role of Rastafarianism in Pan-African movement and the liberation of Black people, remains one of the most pivotal forces in Black history. Since the 2000s, hip-hop, R&B, and Afrobeats have evolved and come to define the sound of the current generation, making reggae less prominent in the mainstream. Nevertheless, many artists still pay homage, often through dedicated song, to the pioneers of early decades who used reggae to champion Black freedom and unity. The Rastafarian movement teaches us that the spiritual awakening can reshape the political world. It took a prophecy, a flag, and a beat and used them to unite a scattered people against empires. Rastas showed that freedom isn't just about changing laws. It's about reclaiming identity, honoring ancestors, and refusing to let oppression silence your voice. From the streets of Kingston to the battlefields of Soweto, and from the clubs of London to the liberation rallies of Harare, Rastafari proves that when faith and culture join hands, they can shake the very foundations of power. This video is to be continued. Thank you for watching Confidential History Channel. Kindly subscribe, like, and share the video. We bring part 2 in a moment. Bye.